living quarters rented out to the poor by Durban's elite. We investigate these alleged slumlords.
Tenants were paying, I think, 700% more than what they would have paid in upmarket areas.
This is Checkpoint, and I'm in Nkepile Mabuse. Business people are said to be raking in big bucks, operating slum buildings across the city centre. Buildings are illegally converted into accommodation, and those desperate for living space stay in unsafe, cramped, rat-infested conditions. Producer Jackie Jayamaha got into the thick of things.
It's early evening, and Durban SAPS are preparing to raid Sardineville. It's the name given to a series of dilapidated downtown buildings rented out by Durban's rich to the poor at prime rates. Among these alleged slumlords are lawyers and doctors who live in comfortable homes, while their tenants live in rooms no larger than an office cubicle. Hussein Muller from the Inatekweni Regeneration and Urban Management Program, or iTrump, is spearheading the night's operation. He says slumlords cash in on the shortage of accommodation in the city.
You'll find a number of these landlords, to us we know them as slum landlords, who have actually converted warehouses and office blocks into accommodation establishments. Most of them are in a state of squalor.
iTrump and the police are backed up by the fire department, health and safety, business licenses, and the Department of Home Affairs. First up is 186 Umgeni Road. Here, privacy is a luxury. The building is a rabbit warren of drywall cubicles that don't even reach the ceiling. The roof is caving in. Ntombi from the Eastern Cape has been living here for 3 years. She shares her space with 2 friends and a toddler. Accommodation is in short supply. She has no choice but to pay.
I already pay 1,200.
Dr. Iqbal Mohammed has researched inner city rentals.
Well, we looked at an objective basis to evaluate rentals. So we looked at the actual space that tenants occupy. And we then compared that with upmarket rentals, and we found that tenants were paying, I think, 700% more than what they would have paid in upmarket areas.
He says most cubicles are no more than 1.5 meters squared, and that they aren't zoned for accommodation.
Generally, these buildings are, warehouses, abandoned office spaces, illegally converted.
Iqbal has been working with refugees since the 80s.
I'm passionate about the work I do. I love working with tenants and helping them enforce their rights and educating them about their obligations.
According to the Rental Housing Act, in order for a dwelling to be considered habitable, it has to have running water, electricity, sanitation, and be safe in terms of ventilation and exits. While there is electricity and water at 186 Umgeni Road, the place is filthy. Garbage is strewn in stairwells, paint is peeling, and many of the rooms have no windows.
There are hundreds of them wooden building, which is easily compared to a sort of informal settlement type of an establishment, wooden building. Together with that, we find that there are no proper ablution facilities within the buildings.
According to iTrump, local GP Dr. Mohammed Dindar is one of the owners of the building and the person they have been dealing with. We phoned Dr. Dindar.
Let me talk to my legal counsel first.
Iqbal says most of the slumlords are wealthy and use lawyers to front their slumlord operations.
It is a kind of gatekeeping, and it's also, landlords and property owners don't want to be in the forefront, don't want to be exposed for the kind of living conditions their tenants are subjected to.
Dr. Dindar's attorney responded, saying there were no tenants as it was a daily accommodation facility, and that the building was undergoing building works to make it a finer establishment.
Creating this impression that it's a daily accommodation establishment is an attempt to circumvent the Rental Housing Act, but in reality they cannot, and we've represented tenants successfully who've faced evictions or exorbitant rental increases. So the law still applies regardless of what kind of image or whatever the intention may be on the part of the landlord to circumvent laws.
The city says it has issued Dr. Dindar with notices of illegal usage and non-compliance when it comes to fire and health.
We also find that there are a number of undocumented people that reside in these buildings, together with the criminal elements that occupy these buildings.
The police were quick to spot criminal activity.
My colleagues that is standing outside saw the parcel of dagga coming out through this window, so we are suspecting that the occupants of this house are involved in dealing in drugs. Police, open up! Open the door, it's police! These rooms that are facing Mgeni Road. No, the guy is not here.
You guys on here? Yeah.
No, it's a dealer. He's selling stuff. Check. We recovered the dagga, a loose dagga. We recovered the loose dagga, and more dagga is outside that is thrown through the window. But we recovered the balance of it in this room.
The culprits were long gone. Next stop on the police raid was 539 Dr. Pixley Kasimi Street, a building called Abyssinia Accommodation. During the raid, city electricians found exposed cables and dangerous fittings all over the building.
Put it back in again, now I'll check it.
Fire is a real threat in a building like this. Abdul Jean is from Tanzania and lives at Abyssinia with his wife and daughter. He came to South Africa to find work. He says this building is no place to bring up a child. He says everyone shares toilets and bathrooms at Abyssinia accommodation.
The big problem was we had about 2-3 toilets when we are over about 200 tenants inside. How we can share 200, 2 toilets, 3-4 toilets when we have more than 200 people?
Rooms cost 1,600 Rand a month. Do the maths.
It would appear from about 1,200 tenants who live in overcrowded conditions, sharing just a few shower cubicles and toilets, they contribute something like 300,000 to 400,000 rands, depending on the number of people there per month.
Abdul says he has been to complain to the supervisor, a woman called Lydia.
That's why it was an argument between myself, and her, because I even told the other tenants inside that's how we are going to keep on paying this amount while we are not getting what we deserve. People, let's say, because they've got no choice, some they are happy, but still, even though they pay, they still need what they pay for.
Abdul has attempted to rally the residents without much success.
Abdul had come to us for assistance regarding his specific living conditions, but also advice on organizing a tenants committee in his building. And that obviously led to him being victimized and subsequently an high court action against him.
The supervisor allegedly tried to evict the troublesome Abdul, but Iqbal and his team stepped in.
I'm not going to go into details. It's safe to say that presently we are assisting him with our legal team to defend his case.
Abdul is worried he's put others in jeopardy.
Some rumors I heard that most of the nation, let's say the Congolese, Burundian, Tanzanians, they're not going to allow in this building. They are giving her a hard time because whenever the problem appears, they just quickly run to the police or to the court. So she's no longer like those kind of people to come and give her some time, hard time.
After the break,
please don't talk stupid to me. I got 33 people staying their feet 20 rand a night.
You're with Checkpoint and we're off to Durban for part 2 of our story on inner city slums and those who lord it over desperate residents.
Tenants of squalid buildings in downtown Durban are marginalized by their poverty and by being immigrants and refugees, says Dr. Iqbal Mohammed of the Organization of Civic Rights.
And then they're further victimized by police raids and illegal evictions.
On the night of the police raid at Abyssinia, Tanzanian Abdul Jan's friend was caught without proper papers.
My friend has been deported. He's in Tanzania. He arrived in Tanzania, it was yesterday.
Can we speak to the caretaker? Is it Lydia?
We went to the building to speak to the supervisor, Lydia, who now wants to evict Abdul. She wasn't there, and we were pushed out of the building by a man on duty behind the reception desk. The building belongs to a closed corporation. The directors did not respond to our questions. Hussein Mullah from the Urban Regeneration Program, iTrump, says landlords often use the subletting excuse to blame someone else for the ghastly conditions. Number 4 Mgeni Road has been zoned for industrial use, but has been divided into cubicles for accommodation.
What a go on, my brother.
David Masela, who lives here, told us that whole families were squashed into these tiny rooms.
Here, we're staying 1-1, or some of them, they're staying about 8 of the people, but the owner is gaining a lot of money, but it doesn't make the place to be clean. The place is dirty.
The building belongs to prominent Durban attorney Ashwin Trichamji. Iqbal says his organization identified this building as a problem property 12 years ago.
We then spoke to the sole member, Mr. Trichamji, and I had spoken to him personally, and his attitude was, I'm not interested, I don't care, the media can do whatever they want to. So there's an example where an owner is made aware if he wasn't aware, and then, has this, adopts the attitude that he's not really interested in any kind of public pressure. And in the meantime, 10 to 12 years later, we have people subjected to appalling living conditions, high rentals, illegal evictions in these buildings.
We asked Mr. Trichamji about the allegations. He said via his lawyer that allegations were unfounded, false and defamatory, and blamed the person to whom he was subletting. He recently won a High Court application to remove him and to evict all the occupants. Hussein says this is not an excuse.
Because if you look at it in terms of the bylaws of the city, it's not only the occupier that's responsible. The owner is also fully responsible for his building. He's the owner, he's the landlord. He should know exactly what is happening within his building.
Especially if the owner is making money from leasing the property. Trichamji's lawyer claims he has suffered a financial loss. Many slumlords insist they are not exploiting the poor. The owner of 34 Carlisle Street, Farouk Asmal, says people are welcome to leave, but that many of them would then be homeless.
You'll find them alternate accommodation and you take them away from me.
The line that the landlords take that they are being charitable is not true. And that's simply because if landlords were charitable, their concern would be the humanitarian side of people.
Room after room is stacked with bunk beds, as many as 12 per cubicle. Mattresses are barely thicker than the boards they lie on. Matthew Mandafaza is from Bulawayo.
I came here because of economic hardship. I've been working, but now my company is closed. So I hope to come here to look for greener pastures.
Instead, he survives doing odd jobs and lives in squalor. According to a survey done by Iqbal's team in 2012 at this establishment, many tenants spend more than half their monthly wage on rent. Matthew says he sends what he can back home.
Yeah, well, what I'm here for is to look for money, to look after my family, for my kids to go to school, and food on the table of my... I'm not worried about how I stay here. What I want is money.
Matthew pays 350 Rand a week for one of these bunks, which means Asmal could be collecting over 8,000 Rand a month from just this one cubicle.
We established 65 people. At other times, there are much more, many more tenants in that building, living in, containers, in bunks. So, on average, the landlord makes 100,000, perhaps more.
Asmal denies making a profit.
My light and water account comes to 14,000 Rand a month. We pay a cleaner 3,000 Rand a month. Please don't talk stupid to me. I've got 33 people staying there paying 20 Rand a night.
He says that he only provides temporary accommodation.
Provide accommodation for 20 Rand a night, okay? I cannot give them better service than that.
On the night of the raid, there were over 70 people staying at 34 Carlisle Street. Asmal said he could prove us wrong.
So why did you go and count in the night? Come and pick me up from home, we'll go together and count.
We made an arrangement to meet at the so-called shelter, but he cancelled, saying he was sick. In 2012, of the 65 people living here, only 2 were paying a daily rate. Matthew says he has been living here since 2008. Forbes Shelton from Harare has been here for 10 years. He works as a taxi driver in Durban. He travels home once a year at Christmas and calls his family once a week. And whilst he knows his living conditions aren't ideal, he's grateful for an affordable place to stay.
You know, when you're used to a place where you stay, it's more like a home.
People also want sort of a permanent or a monthly type of accommodation.
There is a High Court application to close down 34 Carlisle Street, but Iqbal says no one wins in these cases.
And we've had experiences where we've taken on slumlords, and all they did was shut the building down. And within minutes, hundreds of people were rendered homeless. Women who are self-employed, who use machines to sew clothes and little items, were then without money, without shelter.
Hussein agrees. He says they want landlords to shape up rather than ship out. And some owners do come to the party. This building, also in Carlisle Street, has been renovated. It's clean, has running water and electricity, but a number of illegal immigrants were arrested here on the night.
After the break, the checkpoint crew is held captive and forced to destroy their footage.
There are some landlords who become slumlords despite their best intentions. Park Lane is a block of flats in Pinetown outside Durban. Malawian Temba Banda moved in here shortly after arriving in South Africa in 2005. His brother James arrived in 2012. At first, they were happy to pay the 3,000 rand rent for the clean one-bedroom apartment.
Since I came, the place was nice and clean, but it's just past 1 year, and then everything just changed because there's no one cleaning here, and we have no water, we have no electricity. It's just like that.
They get their water from someone who sells it at a nearby taxi rank.
If I'm going I need water, I try to tell someone to take this thing, and they take water from outside and buy it. It's not working, that thing. If you don't have water, there's no life.
Through a crack in the window, the men showed us drug lords standing at the entrance to the building. Hussein says the building has been hijacked by criminals.
You will have a case where outside elements get into a building and totally drug lords take over the building. They didn't make life very difficult for the owner of the property to even come in there.
He says the owner isn't receiving a cent in rent.
So what happens in this case, then we start working with the landlord to see how we could help the landlord.
The brothers seemed reluctant to tell us to whom they paid their rent.
That building has been hijacked, and people are petrified.
When we tried to leave the building, the gang the brothers had pointed out surrounded us. Someone from the flats took these cell phone pictures, showing us with the men. We were held captive for 40 minutes, and they only let us leave once we'd deleted our footage of them. The best way to clean up a hijacked building like this one in the city centre is to seal it so no one can gain entry.
The reason for the sealing is purely from a safety and security point of view, to ensure that the building is properly sealed so these criminal elements do not get into the building, and the area, the whole community is now safe.
It's been done with particularly bad buildings in Durban.
Well, Ark Royal in Mahatma Gandhi Street is a good example of a building that was a hijacked building, and today it's been turned around. If you have a look at the building, you can see there's currently renovation that is taking place for flats within, for reoccupancy of this building. It's now owned by a single person.
Malawian brothers Temba and James have decided they can't live like this.
We have now to leave this country because there's no, better life. Because we can't live in here. It's a terrible place, and it's thinking outside as we can smell. So that's why we decide to leave this country.
But others have no choice but to stay put or live on the streets.
And I think it reminds me of what Mahatma Gandhi said, that there is enough for everyone's need, but not for everyone's greed. And that's the problem here, is greed what motivates unscrupulous landlords, which shows blatant disregard for human dignity.
That's all from us this week. Please do give us your feedback. Our Twitter handle is @checkpoint_ENCA. Thanks for watching. I'm Ngepile Mabuse.